Explosions rock Russian border towns, shattering the quiet of the night and sending shockwaves through communities that once felt far removed from the front lines. The darkness is pierced by sudden flashes, and the distant rumble of blasts now echoes through Russian streets, marking a dramatic shift in the war's geography. Ukrainian drones, once confined to the battlefield, now penetrate deep behind enemy lines, flying silently over Russian territory. These unmanned aircraft slip past traditional defenses, their presence a constant reminder that the conflict is evolving and that nowhere is truly out of reach. Russian air defenses, designed to protect the homeland, are increasingly overwhelmed. Anti-aircraft missiles streak across the sky in desperate attempts to intercept the incoming threat, but many drones slip through. For ordinary Russians, the war is no longer a distant spectacle broadcast on television. It has become a terrifying reality overhead. The conflict has arrived on their doorstep, shattering the illusion of safety that many Russians once took for granted. Families huddle in their homes, watching as explosions light up the night sky just beyond their windows. The sense of invulnerability, once so strong, is now replaced by fear and uncertainty. Official reports speak of intercepted drones and successful defenses, but shaky cell phone footage circulating on social media tells a different story. Blurry videos capture the chaos and confusion as explosions erupt in city centers, and the panic of residents scrambling for cover. Massive fireballs erupt in the darkness, illuminating the fear on people's faces. The panicked shouts and hurried footsteps reveal a growing chasm between the official narrative and the reality experienced by those on the ground. Burning buildings and emergency lights paint a grim picture of the new normal. Ukrainian forces have shifted from a defensive posture to launching calculated strikes on military targets within Russia itself. These operations are not random, they are precise, targeting infrastructure and military assets, sending a clear message that the war's boundaries are no longer fixed. The message from Kyiv is clear and resolute. As long as Russian bombs continue to fall on Ukrainian cities, no place in Russia will be considered safe. Ukrainian leaders address their nation and the world, emphasizing their resolve and the new reality of mutual vulnerability. The psychological impact is significant. Air raid sirens, once a distant memory or a relic of history, now blare in Russian cities. People rush to metro stations and underground shelters, their faces etched with anxiety as they wait for the all-clear. The sense of normalcy is slipping away. The Kremlin's promise of a limited operation is in ruins, buried under the rubble of buildings struck on Russian soil. Emergency crews sift through debris, searching for survivors and assessing the damage, while smoke rises in the distance, a stark symbol of the conflict's new reach. The war has crossed the border, and the sense of detachment that once insulated Russian society is rapidly evaporating. Towns near the frontier are under military alert, with civilians evacuating and streets left eerily abandoned in the aftermath of attacks. The narrative of a controlled, distant conflict is crumbling with each new explosion. News headlines now report attacks not just abroad, but at home, and the crumbling walls of damaged buildings serve as a stark reminder that the war is no longer contained. The average Russian citizen now faces the unsettling reality of war. Interviews with shocked residents reveal a population grappling with fear, confusion, and a growing sense of vulnerability. Long lines for supplies and anxious conversations reflect a society in the grip of uncertainty. The illusion of control is shattered and the war's reach is undeniable. Shattered windows and ruined buildings are now part of the Russian landscape, and emergency responders work tirelessly amid the ruins. For millions, the conflict is no longer a distant event, it is a daily, inescapable reality. The conflict in Ukraine, once thought to be contained within its borders, has now expanded in ways few could have predicted. The war is no longer a distant event for Russians, it is reaching deep into the Russian heartland, touching places that once felt immune to the violence. Ukrainian drones, which were initially used for reconnaissance and intelligence gathering, now strike deep within Russia, targeting infrastructure and military assets far from the front lines. The front line is no longer a fixed boundary, it is fluid, dynamic, and alarmingly close to home for millions of Russians who now live with the uncertainty of war on their doorstep. By bringing the war to Russian soil, Ukraine disrupts the logistical chain that fuels the Russian military machine, targeting supply lines, depots, and convoys that are vital for sustaining operations. Successful strikes on these critical points slow troop movements, delay reinforcements, and create bottlenecks that ripple across the entire Russian war effort. As a result, Russia is forced to divert military resources, redeploying troops and equipment to defend its own territory, stretching its forces thinner than ever before. The war is now fought on two fronts, one in Ukraine and the other inside Russia itself. This new reality marks a dramatic shift in the conflict's scope and intensity. For ordinary Russians, the psychological impact is profound. The sense of insulation and safety that many once felt has been stripped away, replaced by anxiety and fear as attacks hit closer to home. Air defense missiles streaking across the night sky over Russian cities are a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the war is no longer something that happens elsewhere. The Kremlin's propaganda machine, once so effective at shaping public perception, now struggles to contain or explain the conflict's new reality as images of destruction circulate widely. Drones strike targets far from the immediate conflict zone, demonstrating Ukraine's growing capability to project power deep into Russian territory and disrupt critical infrastructure. The message is clear: distance no longer guarantees safety. Even cities and towns far from the front lines are now vulnerable to attack, leaving civilians in shock and uncertainty. The Kremlin's early promise of a quick, decisive victory has morphed into a long, grinding war of attrition, with Russian troops and leaders alike showing signs of exhaustion and strain. Explosions and fear within Russia's borders become harder to deny, as emergency services scramble to respond and the population grapples with a new sense of vulnerability. The war's reach is now undeniable, and the narrative of control that once reassured the Russian public is crumbling, replaced by a growing awareness that the conflict has truly come home. The Bryansk region, once quiet, is now on the front line of conflict. Attacks surge, turning daily life into a tense state of high alert. Residents report near-daily drone incursions and missile strikes. The sounds of explosions and air defense systems are the region's grim soundtrack. Local authorities struggle to maintain calm amid chaos. Official statements often contradict the reality of successful strikes. Key infrastructure is targeted, causing widespread outages and damage. The war is no longer abstract. It is a lived experience of fear and uncertainty. The region feels under siege, paying a heavy price for a war it did not start. Today, a widening gulf exists between two very different Russias, the one carefully constructed and broadcast on state TV, and the one experienced by ordinary people on the ground. On television, the Kremlin projects an image of strength, stability, and total control, using polished news anchors and official statements to reassure the public that all is well. But in the border regions, a very different mood prevails. Here, anxiety and uncertainty are growing. The Kremlin's narrative of calm and control stands in stark contrast to the unease felt by those living closest to the conflict. While official reports often downplay or dismiss troubling events as insignificant, local news outlets and social media platforms are flooded with videos and first-hand accounts that paint a much grimmer picture. These raw, unfiltered glimpses into daily life challenge the sanitized version of reality coming from Moscow, revealing the true impact of the conflict on ordinary citizens. The government's goal is to maintain a sense of normalcy, encouraging people to go about their routines as if nothing has changed. Yet, this strategy is beginning to unravel. The official line continues to present attacks and incidents as minor provocations, easily contained and of little consequence. But the sheer volume of video evidence, eyewitness reports, and viral social media posts makes it increasingly difficult for the authorities to maintain this illusion. The official narrative starts to look less like a confident statement and more like wishful thinking. As skepticism grows among the population, the risks for a government that relies so heavily on controlling information become clear. The truth is beginning to leak through the cracks in the Kremlin's carefully constructed propaganda machine, spreading faster than officials can contain it. The once solid facade of control is visibly crumbling, with even state media struggling to maintain a confident front. On the streets, people are openly questioning the official story, discussing alternative sources of information, and sometimes even protesting. This growing disconnect between government rhetoric and lived reality is becoming a defining feature of the Kremlin's strategy. The truth, once hidden, is now undeniable. The narrative of invincibility that the Kremlin has worked so hard to build is faltering, leaving many Russians to wonder what comes next. The attack on the oil depot in Crimea highlights the gap between propaganda and reality. A massive fire erupted, visible for miles after a successful Ukrainian strike. Official responses downplayed the event, claiming defenses worked. Eyewitness videos showed a direct impact and catastrophic explosion. The official narrative of a suppressed drone didn't match the visual evidence. The deception was clear, exposing the Kremlin's dilemma. The truth of successful strikes is undeniable, challenging the official narrative. The facade of control is cracking, revealing the reality of the conflict. The human cost of attacks on Russian soil is profound. Regions like Bryansk face daily threats, injecting anxiety into life. Parents worry about sending children to school amid air raid sirens. Local economies suffer from direct physical damage and disruptions. Residents become internal refugees, feeling betrayed by the government. First-hand accounts describe a population under siege. The war is a lived experience marked by fear and uncertainty. The public's trust in the government's narrative is eroding. The human cost is mounting and propaganda cannot hide it. The facade of Russian invincibility is cracking, evident in officials' responses. Local governors face public anger and fear, struggling to maintain the narrative. Public statements balance reassurance and damage control. Regional officials demand more resources and support from Moscow. Criticism of the Ministry of Defense grows, questioning air defense failures. The scramble for answers reveals rifts within the Russian power structure. Officials are caught between Moscow's demands and constituents' reality. The struggle to control the narrative signals a failing strategy. Ukraine's strikes inside Russia alter the war's dynamics. The military objective is to degrade Russia's capacity by targeting logistics. Attacks force Russia to reallocate military assets, creating vulnerabilities. The psychological impact on Russians is crucial, shattering the social contract. The war is no longer distant, it is a personal threat. Ukraine aims to erode passive acceptance of the war. The message is clear: no peace for Russia until peace for Ukraine. The strategy is bold, designed to change the war's calculus. Escalating attacks push Putin into an unwinnable information war. His authority is built on stability, now undermined by explosions in Russia. The propaganda machine struggles to explain the fire in its backyard. Admitting Ukraine's success would acknowledge military failures. Denying attacks makes the government look weak and deceptive. The credibility gap erodes public trust, essential for control. The end of normalcy for Russians changes the war's calculus. Questions about military protection and war's cost grow louder. Ukraine's strategy raises the war's costs for Russia. Internal pressures on Moscow increase as the illusion of safety shatters. Putin imported instability, and the information war is being lost. The narrative of control is crumbling, one explosion at a time.